Okay, now we're ready.
Morning, everyone. It is Friday, and this is episode 23 of Gateway Office Hours. We're live here at Gateway headquarters, home of Gateway Works, Gateway Accelerator, Gateway Radar, and God knows what else.
Gateway, whatever else we do
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah. We're here every week, 10 a.m. Friday, Pacific Standard Time. You can follow us here on Facebook, obviously. I don't know. We haven't figured this out yet. Somewhere on this page that you're seeing, there is a follow us button, which you'll get notified.
I'll look right now. There's a follow button. There should be a follow button on this page.
They change it every week. I swear to God.
Oh, really?
They're pushing new code all the time.
Okay.
Anyways, find us. This is where we're at. I'm here with my co-founder, Carter. And today we are talking about fundraising collateral. It's January. People are coming back from vacation. It's time to start kicking ass, pounding the pavement, and getting some money for your company.
Yeah, investors should be easier to reach now.
Yeah.
First of all, let's talk about a little bit of news though before we do the fundraising stuff. Is that
Was
cool?
there news this week?
I don't know, not a lot. I guess in general, startup news. Snapchat is getting sued.
Snap.
For
Snap and Snapchat are the same thing.
Snapchat is the product. Snap is
I
the
am
company.
so old. I just can't get my mind around Snapchat.
Yeah, I had a conversation yesterday with someone about that. Neither here nor there. Snap is getting sued for the.
Oh, good. So it doesn't matter.
They're getting sued. What did it say today? They're getting sued for inflating. They're accused of faking their growth.
Oh.
Which
Tisk.
Yes, but that reminded me of something with respect to growth generally and vanity metrics. So we looked at. So we took a pitch deck. We get a lot of pitch decks from mostly marijuana startups, but even not necessarily cannabis startups. And usually they end up in the bottom of the inbox, but sometimes we pull them up and look at them. And we were looking at one yesterday and we were sharing it with the cohort, kind of saying like, because on the surface, when we gave it like a 10-second glance, we were like, oh, this is really interesting.
This is really interesting, yeah.
Because we wanted to show our cohort, like, look, they have some interesting, really good numbers.
This is your competition.
Yeah, this is your competition, right? And this is the investor's expectation. But then, as we were showing it to them, alarm bells started to go off because there were a lot of really impressive metrics, but they were like too impressive for what the stage of the company.
Yeah.
And so then we started paying a little more attention and looking at the deck in a little more detail and realized it was missing some of the metrics we would have wanted, but it had some vanity metrics that were really exciting. And then it was like, well, where's the revenue then if these are their metrics? And that wasn't really shown. And then we ended up doing a little bit of research online, and it was pretty clear that there was some like super weird hanky-panky with traffic to their website that had happened recently.
Sure.
And the point of this isn't to throw anyone under the bus in particular, but the point is that we weren't even remotely considering investing in this company. So we weren't doing anywhere near the level of due diligence that an investor would do. We literally spent 5 minutes kind of reading the deck and Googling, right? And it smelled bad to us. Like we saw through the vanity metrics and some of the fake growth that they were trying to foist on investors. And if we saw through it, then I think people who actually might write a check who are going to do more work will definitely see through it. So would it have gotten a first meeting? Maybe if we were very lazy and just like looked at the deck generally, but probably not. Even before a first meeting, before you meet with someone, you kind of take a moment and say, okay, well, let me, the first pass of the deck, oh, that's interesting. Now let me look a little bit more before I have a meeting.
Right.
And
I mean, it goes back to the old standard, just don't be an asshole, be transparent.
Honest. Be honest.
Tell a good story.
Honest.
And that's why we give a lot of advice to founders. It's telling the right story, but it's all honesty, right? It's like being transparent.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to air your dirty laundry, but you do have to be honest with what you present and not try and spin a picture that is radically different from the truth of your business. And and you shouldn't, when I say don't air your dirty laundry, the dirty laundry should come up and you should be comfortable having that discussion. So knowing that it's going to come up, you shouldn't have said anything that makes it look like you're trying to, evade it.
Yeah.
But that kind of stuff is going to come up, and it's important for founders to be honest.
Sure.
So that's kind of the reason I wanted to talk about Snapchat, and I don't know whether they actually did it. They're just being accused, so it's an alleged inflation.
I've always thought it was inflated myself. I'll be proven wrong when they exit.
I have no idea.
$10
I mean,
billion,
I have no idea whether they've been inflated.
Sure.
They're accused of it, and that's enough for a story.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about, just this morning in my inbox, Cassandra Farrington from MJ Biz Daily sent out something that I think is super needed in this industry. Maybe I should just kind of pull up the email. So she's released a nonpartisan executive report on the effects of Trump's election to the cannabis industry. And they tried to really, it's a 73-page report.
Oh.
And they tried to really look at like the most probable scenarios and what the likelihood of them is, and how things might play out. And what I like about it, two things. One, I think the timing is good. Two, there's people like sensationalism. They like to say things are better than they are, and they like to say things are worse than they are. Like, people like the sensationalism and the drama.
Yeah.
And what I like about it is her approach. I haven't read the report yet. I just literally before the show saw this email, so I'll have to download it and look at it. But what I like is written her approach is like, I'm just going to try and be objective. And yes, there may be risks. There may not be. Let's look at all the probabilities and what could happen with kind of a level head, which I think is
Sure.
helpful in any industry, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, the cannabis industry is kind of in a unique place, right? We've gotten to where we are because of the advocacy movement and having the troops at the ready. And the way you rally troops is by sensationalizing, right?
Yep.
It's like, oh my God, things are terrible. Everything's on fire. Like, get everyone together. Let's fight this. I think we're going to still need an element of that, but having kind of the counterbalance of, okay, what's really here at stake, especially when there's a lot of money, on the line.
Yeah, so that's the
right?
difference. Like, I think we do need that. It's still federally illegal, so we need to be advocates and, be able to get passionate and upset and make our voices heard. But the flip side is, if the industry is going to mature, then the mainstream and outside investors and people who want to do business in the industry or start businesses in the industry or play in the industry in any way, they need to feel some level of stability in the industry. And if everything they see is always, oh my God, the sky is falling, then it's going to hinder it's going to hinder maturation of the industry generally.
Sure.
And so it is a balance to strike, because you shouldn't stop. We haven't won the war. But we also don't want to shoot the industry in the foot by scaring everyone away every time there's some less than optimal event.
Sure.
Okay, so should we switch back to our actual topic?
I don't know.
Any other news?
Is that the rest of the news?
I was hoping there was news on CES because it's happening, but apparently Gary Shapiro is kind of dismissive of cannabis generally.
Well, they're a little bit behind the times, but hey, sex toys got in there, so.
Yes, I want to plug Oh My Bod.
Go ahead.
One of my companies won CES Best Digital Health Product last year. But there was just a documentary done about the sex toy industry, like breaking into CES, and it featured.
So they're heading back this year, I'm assuming. And
yeah, but we were the first company to get into CES, basically.
Very congratulations.
So,
let's get the first cannabis company in there.
Yes, I would love to have the first cannabis company in there. I did see some grow tech actually.
Okay.
And whenever I see grow tech, I always think it's a metaphor for cannabis, or maybe not a metaphor, but like
oh, we're growing
tomatoes.
tomatoes.
Right? Yeah. So I think some cannabis technology is probably already in CES under the guise of something else.
I've got this great tomato vaporizer.
Exactly. But anyway, it would be great for CES to have a section for cannabis generally. At some point. So that could be our goal.
Okay. So just to transition back, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at GTWI Inc. and using the hashtag GatewayOH, send us your questions. We'll try to get them live. If we don't, we'll address them next week. But let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's talk about some fundraising collateral.
Yeah, so I think the thing we should start with is being able to really succinctly articulate what your business is in an internal way without worrying about necessarily the external facing aspect of it. And what I mean by that is, we talk about this thing, the one sentence pitch. Founder Institute has a version. Other people have versions. We have a version of it. You can actually, there's the URL behind Ben. And actually, maybe Michael might put the URL on the screen in front of us in a minute.
We have face trackers on this thing.
But yeah, your face trackers, so is mine. Ben's going to get up in the middle of the show. Anyway, so that's the URL for the one sentence pitch. And the idea behind the one sentence pitch is really not to, this isn't something that you would actually say to an investor, but it's something that helps you crystallize your idea in your head so that you are able to build off of that and build a conversation out of it. So I'll just read off the one sentence kind of format that we use. It's my company, and you can see this if you go to the URL. My company, name of company, is a category of company, so mobile app or whatever, that helps target customers, and those are actual people, so you should really know who that target customer is, solve a problem, you got to have your problem, buy, and then you have your kind of secret sauce or the thing that makes you unique and special. And the reason why that's important before you really start building your story and learning to talk about your business is if you can't do that well and convincingly, then you're not really going to be, it's kind of like the foundation of what you're going to talk about. If you can't do that well, you're not likely to be able to explain your business well to anyone. So we like to start with the one sentence pitch just as an exercise, kind of like homework. But you probably won't say the whole thing to anyone directly. So once you've got that down and you feel like, okay, you've got a one sentence pitch, it's crystallized, and you feel like you've got a business that's appropriate for raising venture capital. Again, our focus is venture capital. So I won't get into, again, what it means to be asking for venture capital. We've probably talked about that previously. But once you got those two things, then you have to think about, okay, what are the situations in which you're going to talk to investors? So that will help drive what kind of collateral you need to prepare. And often one of the first things that people one of the first mechanisms by which people actually get connected with investors is actually one that's often ignored in terms of preparing collateral. And that is via email. Now, I think we've said before, you always want to get a warm introduction, if possible, via email. You don't want to be cold emailing investors generally. But let's assume that you've done that. And let's assume you've asked, let's say Ben, who's over there messing with the camera still. Let's say Ben knows the investor that you want to target, and you're friends with Ben, and you say, Ben, I want an intro to so-and-so. Well, one of the, if you've ever been on the receiving end of requests like that, so if you're Ben, for example, you get requests like that a lot. And it takes time to write out a little email to someone and say, hey, I'd like you to meet Sally. She has a startup doing blah, blah, blah. I really like her. You should meet her. Here's her contact information, and make that intro email. And Ben, as much as he might like you, is not likely to do that if you put all the burden of the work on him. Also, you don't want to rely on your middleman. You don't want to rely on your middleman's explanation for your business. So what you want to do is have an intro email template, ideally something that your middleman can forward to the person that you want to talk to, that just describes your business, and you want it to be short. You don't want paragraphs long emails. You want, a pretty short, concise, I guess that's redundant, a concise email about what your business is, why you're special or the business is special, what makes it unique in terms of secret sauce, and have it pre-written out so that you can send it to your middleman and say, hey, can you make an intro? Here's the email to send. And sometimes you can format it in a way where they can just forward it and say, hey, I'd like an intro. This is what I'm doing. Would you mind introducing me to so-and-so? And literally Ben might just take that email and just hit forward and say, hey, Bob, see this, whatever it is. And it's all written out. Probably better would be if Ben copied and pasted it and sent it. But either way, you want to save that middle person from having to do the work. And so I think the first piece of collateral you should think about that's often ignored is an intro email. Ben, now that you're back sitting next to me, do you have anything to add to the intro email?
Yeah, I mean, it's even the companies that we're invested in, right? It's like we have very limited time, right? We both got an email recently from one of our companies. I'm not going to call them out, but it said, hey, do you know anyone at these like 15 firms that you can intro us to? And I'm like, okay,
yes.
Am I really going to sit down and do homework on all those 15 firms and find the point person and, intro you? No, I just don't have the time to do that. If I did that for every company that I worked with, I wouldn't get any work done for myself.
Right.
So yeah, make it easier for me. Find out who I am most likely connected with. You can do the homework as much as I can do.
Yeah, can I just stop you there because that's an awesome point. If they're active on LinkedIn, which most people are semi-active at least on LinkedIn, you can see if I'm connected to someone that you want to talk to.
Right. Yes.
You can do that work for me and say, Carter, you are connected to so-and-so. Would you please introduce me? Here's the email. Like that's way easier to respond to than, do you know anyone at DFJ?
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, I do.
In fact, I mean, like this day and age, if I meet someone professional and I go to look them up on LinkedIn and they aren't there, like I have major red flags.
Yeah.
So the chances are, if they're a legitimate business person that I should be connected to, I'm going to be on LinkedIn.
Right. And there are cases where I'm not connected to people on LinkedIn that I do know.
Sure.
That does happen. So I'm not saying that's exhaustive, but you're making a really good point in terms of the founder should do all the work on the front end, and that includes exactly who they want to be introduced to. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments on the email?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. So the email is a good thing to have. The next thing is, let's say their email gets responded to somehow. Now, sometimes you'll have someone say like, yeah, I'm happy to chat for 15 minutes or meet for coffee or whatever.
Actually, sometimes
Go ahead.
the more off. That's actually your goal. Your goal.
That doesn't usually happen.
Your goal is to get to coffee, right? Like this is kind of like dating. You're always trying to get to that next stage. I don't know. Some people don't have that goal in their dating, I guess. But your goal is to take the relationship
stages. But yes,
your goal is to take the relationship to the next level each time, right? Even if it's an incremental step.
Right.
What you're hoping for after you get that first foot in the door is to actually get a phone call or a coffee or something, a short conversation, something that you can actually get some personal rapport. What will often
get them off of email as fast as possible.
What will often happen
absolutely.
though is that they'll ask for a deck.
Okay, so why do they ask? Let's tell people why they ask for a deck.
Well, I mean, oftentimes they're lazy and they don't want to get on the phone. People generally, it's like that's a social commitment, right? And so they're like, give me your deck. I'll review it when I have a chance.
Yeah, so that's why I do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say because I'm lazy, although maybe I'm also lazy. Thanks, Ben. I think it's because I'm very busy.
Yes.
And so the idea of, a lot of founders think like, oh, what, meeting for coffee is no big deal, or 15 minutes is no big deal. I'm like, it is a big deal when you have lots of people wanting 15 minutes from you. And so often I will want more collateral just so that I can make a decision about whether I want to bother meeting with this person.
Right.
And that collateral, even reviewing that collateral goes in stages. There's a first pass of that collateral, which is super quick, no filter.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like, I glance at it, I'm like, oh, nope, not interested, done.
Yep.
Right? If that first glance, if they pass that first stage, then I'm going to look at it in a little bit more detail, and they're more likely to get a call at that point or say like, yeah, let's have a meeting. But regardless, that's why I ask for a collateral. But what you want is to get me or whoever on the phone or in person, preferably, and off of email as fast as possible. So that's why they ask for the deck.
Sure.
So when they ask for a deck, it doesn't mean, first of all, it doesn't mean you have to send a deck. you can send a one sheet. I like having a one sheet.
One sheets are great. One sheets are just basically an entire summary of who your team is, what your goal is, like are you raising, are you looking for advisors, what your business model is, et cetera, et cetera. It's just kind of like a synopsis of everything in one page.
Yeah, and a one sheet is meant to be read, right? It's not meant to be presented. It's meant to be read, and you're not there, and so you're putting your best foot forward in a nice, concise format that they can look at your business. Now, you can send a deck, but the term deck is, I think, an overloaded term.
Sure.
And the reason for that is there's no such thing as a deck. There's decks for different purposes.
Yeah.
And a deck that you might use on stage at a major conference or festival or whatever is going to be vastly different than one that you might use in an hour-long meeting with a VC. Or, which is also very different than one that you might email someone as an introduction to your company. So let's walk through some major differences quickly. One is you have to know, each deck you have to decide, obviously, who's the audience, but B, let's assume the audience in all cases here is investors, so that's done. B is how are they going to consume this, all right? And if it's meant to be sent over email, a typical deck that you would talk through doesn't work very well because your story is gone.
Yeah.
Right. The deck is a deck that you would present is typically visual backup for a story that you're telling.
Right.
A deck sent over email is just the visual backup. It's not very helpful. Imagine watching a movie where there's just no sound and no subtitles. It's like, well, okay, it looks interesting, but I don't know if I like it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what they're saying.
There's been so many times when we've been hosting kind of like a pitch workshop or something, and someone will get up in front of the room and like they'll be like clicking through slides like, oh, I used this for like an investor pitch, a couple months ago. And I'm like, you need version control. You need audio.
absolutely.
Need, there should be like
products.
30 different versions of your deck in your inbox or in your file system,
in your
whatever.
Google Drive or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean they're different products, and actually you just brought up another point. So, if you're making a deck to be read, don't use that one to present. Reading your deck in front of people is not fun to watch. No one wants to watch you read a deck.
Yeah.
So, if you're presenting, the deck needs to be very visual, and your story needs to be important, and you maybe have one kind of key takeaway fact or number or whatever on each slide, one or two, whatever. But if you're sending the deck out, one or two facts on each slide is not a story. It's not really readable. It's like it looks like fluff because there's nothing there. So they are very different products. So getting back to email, you can email a one sheet. You can also email what I would generally recommend emailing. I don't like emailing too much detail to someone I've never even met.
Yeah.
Right. If they're not interested enough to meet you, then sending them all of your financials and everything else is not going to get you an investment.
Right.
So typically what happens is companies will have a teaser deck. And a teaser deck is just a few slides, maybe only 5-6 slides, right? And it's telling the story, but it's word heavy.
Yep.
Right? And it's meant to be kind of read and walk them through some of the major points that differentiate your business. It's kind of that one sentence pitch, marketized.
Right.
Well, that's not the right
Sure.
word. Like,
just go for it.
with marketing guys, it's Don. What's Don Draper? Is that the guy?
Yeah.
I never watched these shows. I can't remember.
Okay.
It's like Don Draper's version of your one sentence pitch, right? It's like spruced up. It's a teaser, but it doesn't say I'm raising XYZ necessarily, and it doesn't say your detailed financials or anything.
Secret sauce.
Right. It's just kind of like, hey, like there's a cool market. We're a cool team. This is what we're doing. Like this is, it's kind of why you should get off your ass and get to Starbucks for a meeting or whatever it is, right? Yeah. So those two things I think are important to prepare, and a lot of people don't prepare either one of those.
Can we just talk about really quick a good tool to use when you're sending these out?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've actually gravitated towards using DocSend. It's really cool because you can load the different versions into your dashboard. You just basically say create a new link and send it out to someone. You get notified when people actually access that link, and then you can also see how long they spend on each page. So when you talk to them the next time, you know what they're actually interested in or what the key talking points that like grab them are. And also, I mean, equally important, what they glossed over and what they didn't really care about.
That's a great point. I love DocSend. We use DocSend, as you said. I think the other cool thing about DocSend is people like to just pass your deck around, and you don't actually want people passing your deck around without you. You want to be there to talk about your baby.
Yeah.
You don't want your baby just passed around on the internet.
Nope.
And DocSend doesn't necessarily prevent that, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. I could email you my DocSend link, and you could it doesn't really prevent that. However, there is a psychological barrier to it, where if it's on DocSend, I'm like,
I think there's
I don't know, I
different.
should send
I think
it.
there's different permissions that you can set. I think
right,
you can
but I
have
could just give you
generally-
my email address and say like, hey, just
Sure.
use my email address.
That's true.
I could, but that extra thing, just by virtue of it being on DocSend, makes me kind of know, okay, it's a polite way to kind of say, please don't fucking forward this around, right?
Sure.
And so I think it works well. Okay, so you've got your intro paragraph, and you've prepared either a one sheet or teaser deck or both, depending on sometimes people ask for a one sheet. So now what do you need? Well, obviously you do need a more than one kind of formal presentation deck,
which then expands into appendices and
detail.
detail.
Which we'll get to, I think. So
okay.
Let's
I'm jumping ahead.
No, it's good. But let's start with the deck. First of all, I think as we said before, the deck is visual backup to your story.
Yep.
So what we recommend founders do actually is first actually write out a script for your story. Just pretend you have the slides there that you imagine are perfect for this. And get your script down first about what you want to say.
So let's elaborate on story a little bit, because we've run into a pinch a couple times where people took us very literally about story, and they just start chronologically with
They were
when
like,
they first
I grew
incepted
up
the idea.
in San Diego, and they're
I'm like,
no,
this is the most boring story ever.
Yes, it's just not a biography.
Yeah, it's not a biography. It's the story arc of your company, like the climax being the most exciting part of your company. The support being like, is it the team that's super awesome? Is it the idea and your unique approach? It's
So
everyone
the story
has
doesn't
a
even
unique
have
story.
to be chronological, is what you're saying. It can be like,
Right.
it's
It's not about you. It's about your company.
yes,
It could be about you.
and it's not necessarily even about your company's origin and struggle over the years or whatever, right? It's about why your company is worth taking a look at for investment.
Yeah.
And so the elements that should have in it, a good place to start is Guy Kawasaki's 10 slides, right? Which we have you can get that at Gateway as well, 10.gtwy.co. It's also on your screen.
Haha, look at
And
that. Fancy.
that's just a link to Guy Kawasaki's 10 slides.
Yeah.
The information in those slides, all that information should be in your deck, but not in that order necessarily.
Not in that order, not in bullet points, not with titles on this. Well,
Right.
you could do titles on the screen, but
Right, but like don't take that too literally. It's just the content needs to be there. All those points need to be addressed. And what you need to do is take all those points and know, okay, these are the points I need to address, and then figure out what order to address them in a way that really emphasizes or makes your story compelling and emphasizes what you've got going for you. So for example, if one of the strongest components about your story is the team, maybe you want to lead with the team.
sure.
Right?
Like if you're a NASA scientist and you're designing a jet propulsion engine,
Right. Right, exactly. Or if there was the classic example for in my life that I remember is I coached a founder once who was pitching this. It was a business intelligence. He's a great guy. You know him, KG. He's pitching a business intelligence software that used AI and machine learning to do a whole bunch of really cool stuff. It was a B2B play. And he had this whole deck, and it wasn't until like halfway through, or maybe it was close to the end, where I found, and he had been talking about all this, like, well, this is how AI works, and this is what it can do, and this is machine learning, and this is how we can apply it to this problem. He's solving some specific problems. And it was like, the whole time I'm like, well, why is this guy special? Like, this is interesting. What makes them different? Because it wasn't something that I felt like no one else could do.
right.
It was like, well, other AI experts could maybe do this. But then at some point in the deck, he got to his team. And his team, this is not exactly correct, but his team was literally 5 former successful entrepreneurs. Like, all of them had exits, some of them multiple exits, and like good exits.
Yeah.
And it was like literally like AI expert from MIT, AI expert from this other, like machine learning expert from like Stanford. It was like, holy shit.
It's the type of team that you write a check without knowing what they're doing.
Right. It was like this dream team of people.
Right.
And I remember saying to him, like, start with that. Like, just start with that.
Yeah.
And like, you've had me at the team.
People just start writing the checks as you're talking. It's like,
Right. So it's ordering those points is
Right.
what's very important. And so once you have those points in an order, then getting back to what we were saying before, you want to have a script. And the average human can speak about 150 words a minute while presenting. So if you're preparing this, you should know what this deck is for. So if it's for a pitch competition that's 3 minutes, that's 450 words.
Yep.
If it's for a pitch competition that's 6 minutes, well, that's 900 words.
Can we talk about for a second why most pitch competitions are about 3 to 5 minutes?
Boredom, I think, is the main reason.
Yeah, I mean,
Why are YouTube videos 3 minutes?
Yeah,
Mostly.
so-
Yes.
maybe I'll just go ahead and take this. It's like, please, for the love of God, like no one wants to hear you ramble on for 10 minutes, 15 minutes about what you're doing. Like, you want to get into a conversation as quickly as possible. So keep it to 3 to 5 minutes. I like to say 3, no more. Make it as interesting as possible. Only put in like the key elements. Allude to the things that you're going to be able to blow their mind away in conversation, and just end. Like, just make them interested in what you're doing.
Make them want more.
Yes.
You want them to want more.
Not
Yes.
answering everything in your pitch is the most valuable thing that you can do.
Right.
Because then it leads to Q&A and it leads to a relationship.
So long as you look like you're sophisticated enough that you've at least touched on all the main issues and you have answers to them.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
But yeah, I completely agree. And when I said boredom, like you can be bored for 3 minutes and it's okay. But if conferences did 15-minute pitches and someone was sucked, people would leave the room. It would
Right.
get that boring. It was like, I can't take this for another 2 minutes. Right? Yeah, right? And we all have a tendency to ramble, or at least people like me do. So 3 minutes kind of forces you to get that, that concise brevity. So, okay, so that's a deck to prepare. And again, that's very visual, and the visuals are backups to your story. So you first develop your story, then you develop your slides to go with it. Like I said before, 1, 2, max like 3, but usually 1. I like one takeaway on each slide is kind of the best. And you can put hard data there. Right? So if you're saying, there's a trend of blah, 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 and this is happening, put the number to back you up on the slide, right?
Yeah.
And show that, or the graph, or whatever it is. So that gets you there. But those pitches don't get you to investment. Those pitches get you maybe a meeting, maybe a conversation, and some exchanging of business cards afterwards. The next thing that generally happens is from either the email or an on-stage pitch, you end up sitting down with someone, maybe at coffee, especially early stage investments, right? And just having a discussion with them.
Right.
The collateral that you need for that is your brain.
You need to have done your homework. You need to be able to be concise and be able to speak to the key points. Always bring it back around to your key talking points. Like, just have real direction. And what I like to tell people is really like just kind of like visualize like the situation that you're going to be in. Like, the person, what they know about you, yourself. It's like you need to get that relationship to the next stage. It's like, what's it going to take? How is that conversation going to go? Like, what are you going to keep driving that person back to, and like how are you going to progress that conversation?
And knowing that person is important, right? Having done a little bit of research on that person beforehand. I mean, you should probably do that before you reach out to them in the first place. But knowing like, okay, this guy is really interested in AI.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk more about the AI stuff and my vision for how AI can apply to this problem I'm solving. Whereas maybe this other person is really more focused on the immediate solution that I'm using, and like, really more interested in kind of my customer base and whether I know them and the problems they have. And so I'll focus on how much I've really done research and really know them and are looking for ways to help them, right? And so knowing who you're talking to is super important. So to prepare for that, I think you need to practice talking about your company, and you need to have a mental FAQ, right? You need to know, okay, these are the things people always ask. All right, should I maybe move some of them into the discussion where I say them without being asked, or should I just make sure I have answers at the ready that are well worded? What you don't want to do is look like a deer in the headlights.
Right.
If someone is like, well, what about blankety blank? And you're like, I don't know.
And you know what
That's
leads
not
to
good.
that? This is going to be a quick sidebar. Is not your idea. Like
Right.
everyone's always like how do I protect my idea? How do I make sure someone doesn't steal it? Like I feel like I have to say this like once
I
every
can't
month,
believe we're
just
still
out
saying this.
loud. But it's just like
Yeah.
talk about your goddamn idea, right? It's like sorry.
Okay.
It's like if you think that holding your idea as a secret is going to help you like get further ahead and like not let people know about it, you're just doing yourself a disservice because you're going to be so poor at talking about what you're doing and like understanding the way people react to the different talking points. Like you're just not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, you need practice, and you need to sharpen your communications and your wits about talking about your, with respect to talking about your business. And you can't do that without talking to people.
Right.
And so, yeah, I totally agree. And I'm honestly, Ben, I keep forgetting that we have to tell people. I can't believe we still have to tell people stop not talking about your business. Like talk about it. But yes, so you need to do that. That's what you need to do. Prepare for that conversation. Eventually, hopefully, you'll sit down with someone in a kind of longer format with some collateral where they want to like roll their sleeves up a little bit.
Dig
right?
in.
And that's when you need a longer pitch deck. It can be a little bit more word heavy, but it's still not meant to be read.
Right.
And the feature of that pitch deck really isn't the pitch deck itself. It's really not the main body of the pitch deck. It's the appendix.
Right.
And so what I like personally there is a relatively concise, good story arc, good solid pitch deck, and then an appendix that's just super deep, super into the weeds.
Yep.
So that when I'm asking a question of a founder, when maybe they're on slide 4 and they're talking about market size, and they switch to slide 5 and it's not market size anymore, I can say, wait, I have a question about that. Like, what? Like, can you dig into this market size thing? I want them to be able to say, oh yeah, and flip to a slide in their appendix or several slides that are just deep details on that. Right. And those kind of discussions, usually when you have those kind of discussions, you don't actually end up going through your deck linearly. You start linearly, and because it's interactive, someone asks a question, and you go down a rat hole, which is great, and you end up pulling up an appendix slide and talking about something, and you may never really get to the end of your deck, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. That's what you want. You want that discussion, and that discussion is the thing that really can lead. That's the discussion that signals that you're on the path to getting investment, right? Without that discussion, it's not going to happen. So you got to get to that discussion.
And a little pro tip, this is just something that I like to do. I'm kind of a PowerPoint geek. It's just like, if you have these like main topic slides throughout the main part of your deck, you can put like a little like information bubble in the bottom left-hand corner, hyperlink it to a certain slide so that you're not sitting there clicking through 30 slides. You can just click it and boom, it takes you to that part of the appendix, and it just expands the knowledge. You could also put a page like at the front of your appendix that has like different categories, and you can hyperlink those. So you can hyperlink like within your deck, and it just helps a lot with navigation. And when you have like I've seen some decks that are like 50 to 100
Easy,
pages.
Yeah.
It helps out a lot.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the. So that's kind of all the. We're kind of going over time, so I don't want to spend too much more time on this. But we've gone over kind of all the front-facing collateral that we're kind of talking about. But there's some back-end stuff. Some of this may be in your appendix, some of it not. That you really need to make sure you have all these kind of things
Spreadsheet
done. Right. So one is, frankly, your legal formation documents. Right. Are you a Delaware C Corp? If you're touching the plant and have a separate entity, is there a clear agreement between them? Is the IP owned by the Delaware C Corp? Like, is it going to pass muster? Is it a nice solid agreement that's locked in the MBC or the non-for-profit to service to the C Corp without being able to just like leave and take IP, right? Like silly, obvious things like that, right? Do you have employment agreements? Is there like IP assignment from all your employees? So all the kind of legal stuff that needs to be done, stock, all taken care of. Your cap table, brings me to cap table. Like, do you have a cap table that's clear and understandable and not super
And
messy.
the legal agreements with the people on that cap table.
Yes, right,
Yes.
right. Not just like, oh, I told my uncle I'd give him 30%, which is like, well, okay, right? Do you have a detailed financial plan? So I mean, like revenue projections, revenue and expense kind of projections in a financial model, really more than anything else.
There's levers and knobs and
Exactly.
inputs.
Again,
Yeah.
maybe the end numbers are bullshit, but all of the levers and knobs
So could
all
we,
matter.
Could we talk about that just for a little sec? Because something that I started recognizing a lot in the cannabis industry that I didn't get exposed to a lot in the tech industry are like pro formas, PPMs, like people asking me for these things, and I'm like, I don't know, I have a spreadsheet. And
It's
I think
also because you're an investor now, and the people you're talking to are used to PPMs a little bit more than
sure.
Yeah,
No, I know, but
you're talking
it's-
to a different class of investor than you used to.
I've been at like cannabis pitch competitions, and people have asking these people that are at the idea stage for these types of documents,
Right.
and they're a lot more sophisticated, typically.
Yeah. So a PPM is basically a private placement memo. It's expensive to produce. There's like pages and pages of legal crap at the end that you've got to pay a lawyer for.
Right.
It's something that large, sophisticated financial institutions tend to like. So if you're, for example, if you're pitching to a pension fund, which no one should be doing, but they're going to need a PPM, right? Mostly in the startup world, you shouldn't have a PPM. You shouldn't need a PPM. There are some cannabis investors who are not familiar with startup investing, but have extensive experience in other industries where they get PPMs, and so that's what they're asking for.
Yeah.
I think in those cases, just a little bit of education might go a long way, and say, it's one guy in a basement, like
Right.
I'm eating ramen. Like PPM is not a great use of money right now. This is what I do have, right? And you should have the information, because the information is kind of the stuff we just talked about.
Right.
I
mean, more often than not, they want to know that you have an actual business that is underlying whatever it is.
right.
that
So the
you're
pro
working on.
formas is a good one too, right? So I think we've said this before, but like the purpose of having the financial model changes over the life of your business. At the beginning, you need a financial model the whole time. At the beginning, the purpose is to show that you know those not bells and whistles, knobs and levers or whatever, that can adjust the economics of your business, right? That you've done the homework, you understand the unit economics, you understand the assumptions that you need to make in order for things to work out, how they might or might not work out. But the actual revenue, and obviously the historical numbers mean nothing at the beginning because there are no historical numbers, and the projections don't mean much either because the projections are based on the nothing of historical revenue.
Sure.
But as you grow as a business, that kind of changes. And over time, let's say you've been operating for 5 years, eventually your historical numbers matter and your projections matter because they're based on your historicals. And that's why you get, I think I've said this before, but maybe not on this show. That's why you get, when you have like a Series Seed investor versus a Series D investor, right? That's why you get different kinds of investors asking different questions. You get, Goldman Sachs never comes in on a seed round, right? Because they're not going to evaluate you as a founder and the idea and whether they think it's like, they're just going to look at your numbers and be like, oh, Sequoia said they like it, and look at the financials. Like, okay, good. It's more sophisticated than that. I don't want to dismiss them, but they're very good at analyzing the financials, which you can't really do without any history.
Right.
And so, but early stage investors are more risky, and they're more comfortable with risk, I guess is the phrase, and they're not necessarily looking at the pro formas and believing the numbers. They just want to see that you're the kind of founder who understands all that stuff.
Right.
So that's a super thing to have in your back pocket. And you need to have that. And I would say the last thing, because we need to wrap up the show here, I would say the last thing is, you should have an FAQ, and I'm not in the format of an FAQ, but you should know all the common questions that people ask.
Yes.
And details on every slide. All of those, the 10 Kai Kawasaki points, all of those you should have details in. Like, why do you think that's the market? Why do you think these prices matter are going to work? Why do you more about the tech? Like, you should have details on all of that, and you should have details on, if two people ask you the same question, sometimes maybe even just one person asks you a question, you realize, oh shit, I should have a good answer to that.
Yeah.
Go develop a good answer so you have a good answer.
I've literally had someone say, that question always comes up. And I'm like,
yes.
and?
Right. So where's all the homework you've done?
Where's your awesome knock it out of the park answer?
Right, yeah. So that's the other thing that you need to have. And really, all the stuff before, so all this stuff that we're talking about at the end, that's the meat of your business. That's the stuff that you guys, you and your potential investor discuss in detail, and that's a conversation. Everything until that is just to get to that conversation, right? Yeah. You have to have compelling stuff to get to that conversation, and then that conversation has to be, you have to have the stuff to have that conversation in order to get the investment. And without either one, it's very unlikely that you'll get investment as an early stage or any stage company.
All right. And we want to maximize that investment.
Yes, we do. And we probably need to end soon because we promised we were going to try and stick to.
All right. Well, let's end. Let's just recap really quick. So if you go to a couple of these links, we have the 10.gtwi.co. Those are the 10 slides that Guy Kawasaki recommends. Again, not the structure that you need to follow, but a good outline of the information that you should have at the ready.
Yeah.
And it'll help you do your homework so you can answer those questions on the fly. The one sentence pitch, it sounds a lot easier than it is. You need to get that as succinct as possible. You need to make sure that you know exactly what it is that you're offering, who exactly your customer is, what your secret sauce is. It just needs to be super clear so that when you say it to someone, and it's not necessarily for marketing, but just for at least to clarify things internally, what it is exactly that you're doing.
So that, your one sheet, your teaser.
And talk about your company. Get feedback. Just get out there and answer questions and make sure that you are, again, the master of your domain. I've said that many times before.
You'll say it many times again, I'm sure.
I know. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at GTWI Inc. Use the hashtag GatewayOH to send us your questions.
Join us next week. Seth Adler will be on from
Seth,
Can Economy.
I love Seth.
Yeah.
The host of Can Economy. I think he's had 220 episodes or something like that. He's talked about just about everyone in the industry. And he's got the most incredible radio voice.
He has. I'm so jealous of his voice. He's got
You'll see him here next week. We are at Gateway Works. If you want to work with some of the coolest up-and-coming entrepreneurs, service providers, distributors, growers, everyone's coming here. We have like 10 new companies starting this month. It's turning into a really cool place to work. So come work.
You can use the hashtag or a discount code GatewayOH for $150 off your first month.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do we get that?
We're paying our firstborn children.
Yes, this is true.
But yeah, join us next week at 10 for Seth. We'll be here with Seth Adler, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, happy Friday, everyone.